Dr. Michele Drake at the Drake Center. I'm here today with Francine of Call MsBehaving. And as you guys know, I'm a veterinarian at the Drake Center, and I'm going to let Francine introduce herself in a second. But we're going to talk to you today about separation anxiety. It's something that as a veterinarian I see a lot, and we work with Francine quite a bit to help owners whose pets, whose dogs have this issue. But in addition, during this COVID time, we've seen so many people get great, new family members, puppies. And I think the opportunities for them to have set up a routine that is going to maybe lend itself to dogs being used to it is not the same because they're home so much, which is great in some ways that they have a positive experience with a puppy. But the downside is that the puppy's not learning how to separate and how to have away time with the owner. So these are things I'm concerned about as a veterinarian because I do see a fair amount of separation anxiety in our patients. And we really do work hard to kind of help people avoid that by talking to them about it early on, and then, with the help and advice of Francine. So you're going to get my input on it. You're going to get Francine's input on it. So let me turn over to Francine and have her just kind of talk about this a little bit too.
Hi, I'm Francine Miller with Call MsBehaving. I've been doing behavior consultations in town for about 16 years now and work with many of the patients at the Drake Center when they need help. So one of the things that you want to do to get your puppy or your dog used to you being gone again, or for the first time, is to practice departures. And I like to do that in the home. So it's a good time to do that. I like to set the dog up with a scent, perhaps, that is mild, but something that they may like and find relaxing, an essential oil of some kind. I like to have music going that is calming for the dog, and you can just play soundscapes from your TV, or there are lots of music selections on YouTube that last a long time, and it's calming music for dogs specifically. So you can look for that. And I'd like to have a comfort item of yours in with the dog so that the dog has something that has your scent on it. So that they don't feel so alone and that they know you're around. And obviously in the X pen that they're in, which I would prefer over a crate because many dogs really hurt themselves trying to get out of a crate because they're panicking about being alone and they can really injure themselves. So you want to be, if you can, have a camera that will record what the puppy or the dog does when you are absent. And then you can gauge whether the dog really does have just separation related problems or true separation anxiety. True separation anxiety will show itself right away, usually in the first 15 minutes of your absence. You'll see barking, destruction of objects, trying to get out of the enclosure, injuring themselves. I've seen adult dogs actually, go through a glass window to try to get outside. They might house soil, they might pant, they might drool, they might pace. So if you see those things, then you know that you have a pretty serious issue with the doggy, that the dog's really panicking and very uncomfortable with your absence, and you're going to have to do some work to get the dog used to you being gone. So that's really what we're here to talk about today. And I'm going to let Dr. Drake talk about the medication piece to this that we use with adult dogs anyway, to try to help them not panic. And then I'll go back into more of the behavior modification work that we do with all of them.
So before I even go to the medication, I do want to mention, and Francine, I assume you approve of this messaging that I give to clients. I always like to remind clients that dogs, have been with humans like as companions for thousands of years, and they're naturally our pack animals, and they want to be with our pack all the time. So that modern life really, that their behavior has not really caught up with, or may never catch up with, because they truly want to be a companion with a family, or at least a family member during the whole day. They're all the time. So now our modern lives are that we are home in the evening with the dog, we spend the night with them, we have the morning with them, and then quite often, at least Monday through Friday, we take off and we leave the dog at home and expect them to be okay with that. And many dogs just are not okay with it. So there are things we can do with modern life that include, dog walking services, sharing of pet care with our neighbors and things. There are things we can do. But certainly from my perspective, I do talk to people so at least have an understanding. They don't get mad at the dog. Like, this is what the dog naturally wants, is to be with someone all the time. If they can't be with that person all the time, if that's your lifestyle, let's see what we can't do to set them up for the best opportunity for success to fit your lifestyle also, while being understanding of what the dog experiences and what they're thinking too. So confinement, whether it's a crate, some dogs do really well with crate, a lot do not. So X-Pen, finding out what fits your breed and is safe in your family, obviously super important. So, there's kind of two topics we're sort of covering today. One is like, what are the best way to set up our puppy so we won't have problems with that, which Francine's kind of talked about those things already, and she's going to talk more about it. But in addition, once we reach an adult stage of a dog, and we do have really significant issues with separation anxiety, to remind people this is truly a suffering that your dog is experiencing. A panic attack, anxiety is very much of they're suffering. And so I do highly recommend the use of medication for dogs that either need this just on occasion because the owners are generally home, but now they can't be for whatever reason. Or if we find that dog has it and now we're going to start to work on some of the behavioral issues that we need to address, that this could be used during the transition, and maybe even needed at a low dose the whole dog's life if we can't, transition to somebody being with the dog all the time. Because again, I think anxiety is a form, it's a very unpleasant experience for the dog, and they're suffering, and I want to alleviate that suffering in a safe way. So we do recommend doing that when it's required, and we work with Francine to do the combination of medication, and then she's going to help the family learn what they need to do to best address this.
With a dog, an adult dog that has this issue is probably a little different than a brand new puppy that has this issue, but neither of them are having a good time. So I really ask my clients to not let them be alone. And as Dr. Drake was mentioning, taking them to daycare, having another dog be in the house with them, if that is good enough for the dog. Sometimes it is not. They want a human. Taking them to work with them while they're working on the behavior modification, because we don't want the dog to be panicking anymore. We have to stop the practicing of that. That's why that's so important. So the whole behavioral protocol won't work at all if the dog is still practicing panic. So that's why it's so important to stop the panic no matter what. I have people start in the house doing departures. So let's say the puppy or the doggy's in an X-Pen. I like to try to have the dog taught to do a down stay on a bed or a mat inside there, just because that position is relaxing and they can learn better to be relaxed there. So that is something that I like to teach the dog to be able to do. And then I just start with pass-bys, where you are literally just walking past the dog, not paying any attention at all to the dog, no matter what they're doing. And just go back and forth in front of them, and don't speak, don't throw a treat, don't do anything, just to make your coming and going be a non-event. And then I actually just have you stand in front of the X-Pen and say to the dog, "I'll be back." Turn your back to the dog, turn around and say, "I'm back." And so you haven't gone anywhere. You're standing stationary doing that. And then you just start to move further and further away from the dog, but always going back to the X-Pen to say, "I'm back." The dog just needs to understand that you're coming back, because the panic is about the anticipation of some danger that they think is going to happen with your absence. So they just need to learn, oh, I'm okay here because my person is going to return. And those departures have to be sometimes very minuscule for the dog to be able to handle. So you have to work slowly at this. And I always tell clients that slower is faster, because if you go too fast and the dog panics, then you've kind of lost all the ground you gained by trying to be separated. I work inside where the client is doing this departure conditioning. by leaving a little bit at a time in front of the dog before they ever get out of the dog's sight. And then we start working with actually being out of the dog's sight, but it's very tiny. It's like touching the doorknob and going back to the dog, opening the door crack and going back to the dog. It's a very slow process. And you'll want to have the camera going, especially once you're outside, so you can see what the dog is doing. And if the dog is panicking, that you can go right back in, so that that doesn't go on for very long, if at all. It's really good for you to know your dog's body language for when they're getting tense or anxious as well. You know, if they're doing a lot, if they're breathing hard or doing a lot of lip licking, or there's a number of different things they might be doing that show that they're stressed. So you don't want them to be having that stress. And then I also ask clients to try to uncouple their departure signals, essentially, because dogs know when you're leaving. They know that when you put your coat on or your sneakers on or pick up your keys or your purse, that you're going somewhere. So you need to do all those things, and may even need to make a list of them. You need to do all those things and not leave.
Great. Those are super ideas for getting people. So again, we're going to have all these folks that have been home so much, and maybe this fall things are starting going back to normal, and they're going to, you know, have to like leave. So setting up a routine, but certainly starting out with baby steps like this to get the puppy used to being okay with away time for the owner to be away, and the puppy understanding that I am okay when things are away. I love the idea of, you know, putting cameras in the house. So, because otherwise how will we know? I mean, when we get home, they're like, and they're like, you know, they've gone to the bathroom, people want to get mad at them. I'm like, no, they went to the bathroom, because once you get that sympathetic nervous system going so much, it's going to cause that. You know, so having an understanding that, you know, of what's going on before we get to that point would be really helpful, to not get all the way to that super stressed out stage before we interrupt, and realize we may have to come up with some other plans too. Some dogs just are not going to tolerate us being away for long periods of time. There are some dogs that just are not going to tolerate that. And I think it's better to have an awareness of that before we get too busy with our lives, and then have to come up with plan B and C to, you know, fit that and accommodate the dog's needs.
Well, and certainly with puppies, they can learn to be alone. They can learn to self-soothe. They won't, dogs that are having a lot of anxiety usually can't eat anything. So a lot of, you know, people with separation anxiety are taught, well, give them a stuffed Kong, give them a bone, give them something, but the dog's too stressed out to even touch it. So it's important to give the dog those things when you're home, and when music's going and the scent is going and everybody's relaxed, so that it's all associated with your presence. And they're more likely to be able to enjoy that and use that as a way to calm down when you're gone.
Yeah, I mean, to be on the positive side, a lot of dogs really do develop, you know, perfectly good patterns of staying home for many hours during the day. And I always tell people, especially if you have a high energy dog, we just got to make sure we do the proper exercise. And no matter what, whether they have separation anxiety or not, high energy dogs need to get that released. I prefer that you do some of that before you go to work, and then obviously some after work too, and school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I call it getting their yayas out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so important to do the fitness that is needed. There's certain breeds that I call them 4 mile a day dogs, and I let people know as soon as I meet them, and they're probably like, do you know this is a 4 mile a day dog? 85 and you're using a walker, and you got a 4 mile a day dog. I see a red flag right there that we need to address. And you know, if somebody who's had standard poodles their whole life and now they're 85 and they get a standard poodle, I'm like, ay, this is a dog that must have a ton of.
I know.
Yeah, too bad people don't always ask us what the breed they should get before they get them. But if they did, it would be helpful. If not, try to help to find ways to, you know, still keep that dog in their home and happy, so that they're both happy. So I think it's been super helpful. I do want to have an opportunity to have Francine maybe add a little bit more information. And also we're going to provide some links of, you know, things both obviously for the Drake Center, but also Francine, so that you guys know where you can reach out to her should things come up. We refer cases to Francine a lot because we know people, in addition, we can identify issues, but we are not the people that are going to work with you in your situation and help figure out the best way. And Francine is really, really great, a great resource for the Drake Center and for our clients to provide that care that you're going to need, that time and explanation. There is time required for this, and people do need to know we live everything so fast anymore, and dogs don't really understand our modern life. We do actually have to put time and thought into it. But remember, most dogs can learn how to adapt this, and just listen to what Francine has to say to help us figure those things out. So anything else to add, Francine?
Just that I think that I think it's really important when I work with clients that have dogs that already have separation anxiety. They often need a lot of support because the process can be slow and frustrating. And so I keep in touch with them through text and email or phone calls if they need it, if they need to call me and say, okay, this is how far I've gotten with this, and this is where the dog is, and what might I do next to help things along. So I am available to do that. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a face-to-face or even a FaceTime call to help. And I like to stay up to speed on what's going on, so I know that at least you're working towards a resolution.
Yeah, and just knowing that they're going to meet with you maybe the next month usually is a little cue to people that keep doing their homework so that they can progress to the next step. And obviously it's super helpful when their dog is responding to the things you've recommended to them. So
yeah, I try to check in with people and ask for updates because I don't often get a voluntary update, but some people are great at it. Some people send me a lot of information. It's very helpful. It's helpful so that I can help them.
Right.
So having that relationship is important to work out on anything.
That's great. Yeah. So we're all a team working on this to make sure we make those dogs comfortable and happy.
So thank you for your kind words.
Yeah, you're welcome. So, well, thanks so much, Francine. I hope we can do some more of these for our clients, and just to get information out there to people to help them with what's going on and help them to start out with really good habits so that we don't wind up with issues. But even people that do the most perfect thing, sometimes things happen. Again, I have people who just have a lifestyle change and now things are different, and it is what it is. They got to pay the bills. So we try to make sure that everyone knows it's not their fault. We just have to work with that situation to make it the best it can be.